Well, joining me now live to discuss some of this morning's top stories is former Labor Senator Stephen Conroy. Good to see you. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Let's talk about the issues in aged care homes. A story today in the papers that at least 23 have had to shut their doors since September. They simply cannot grapple, they say, with Labor's stringent reforms. Has Labor tried to do too much to the industry too soon?
Well, I think if you look at the overall sector, you're seeing a growth in beds and you're seeing a growth in openings. So I think it's very hard to just say, because some have been under serious stress and have closed, that's the fault. I mean, if it's the fault of Labor for going too fast, then how has there been growth in beds? How has there been open? So I think it's more complex. Everyone knows that the situation before COVID was it was hard to get staff. They were underpaid. And then in COVID, this reached a crisis level where the entire sector was just in diabolical trouble, both in the level of care, what they charged, and how they managed to fund themselves. So I think Labor, and credit to the previous government, that they set up the Royal Commission. So Labor's taken a bit between the teeth and said, well, we've got to get on with this. We can't allow the state of care that existed during COVID to go on. We need to put these reforms recommended in place. Now, that does mean that some of the nursing homes, which were marginally economically during COVID, have struggled to survive and have obviously closed. But what you've seen is a growth in the sector. You've seen wages, a massive increase, 15%, supported by the government to try and redress this lack of staff that people need. Obviously, getting nurses, particularly into regional areas, is a challenge because we've got a shortage of nurses across the country. So we're in a situation where Labor is wanting to implement those reforms.
All right, let's move on now. We know, of course, the cost of living crisis, it's biting across the country at the moment, Stephen, and now we find that grocery costs, they're outpacing the overall inflation rate. I think food inflation has reached a new peak of about 9.6% in April alone. It's not getting any easier for Australians. Do you think that, on one hand, perhaps grocers are profiteering?
Look, no question. This is just obscene. They are profiteering at the expense of Australians under the cover of Reserve Bank commentary, under the cover of, well, there was some floods 2 years ago or 3 years ago that did dramatically impact fresh food prices. But they have no excuses today. They are far outstripping the wage growth. I mean, it's not like you can pretend that the wages of truck drivers who deliver to the stores or the retail workers have boomed through the roof. This is entirely profiteering. And I don't hear a word from the Reserve Bank government about this. I don't hear a word from Simon Birmingham, Peter Dutton calling out the profiteering. And I certainly don't hear a word from
Labor? Labor hasn't done that. Labor hasn't called out any grocers for profiteering either.
Well, I think that there's a long way to play on this on the Labor side. But the business community, not a word. Want to blame wages? It's going to be inflation because of wages. No, inflation's happening now because of profiteering by companies like Coles and Woolies. This is just on the table. This report exposes it. And everybody should be staring at them going, enough is enough.
Well, it's not going to get any easier. They say it's not going to ease until later this year. So still a long way to go, Stephen Conroy. We have to leave it there. We're out of time. Thank you so much for joining. Likewise.